Hi, I'm Kyle Watson. I'm a DJ and producer. I've been in the industry for over a decade. In 2020, I'd just been coming off the back of a pretty busy touring schedule across North America, South America, Australia. And on the last sort of few tours that happened right before sort of March 2020, we had sort of heard ramblings of, coronavirus, and countries were starting to lock down, and you kind of don't really want to deal with it, but it gets to a point where you do have to. And yeah, once Cyril came in and dropped the news about the country going into a full-on lockdown, it became pretty real. Obviously, when the news dropped and we went into lockdown, there was sort of a sense of relief that I had, because I had been very busy and the traveling was a little hectic for me. So it kind of came as a bit of a relief that this 3 weeks now was going to be quiet. But then obviously 3 weeks turns into 3 months, 3 months turns into 6 months. Which is very frustrating, and you realize that you're kind of being left behind when the rest of the world is starting to move again, which can be quite a difficult thing to deal with, knowing that you're kind of like in the back seat in that situation. So I think the most frustrating thing for me, or the point where it really kind of hit me, was I had a lot of stuff planned for 2020. Things were going very, very well. I was playing amazing shows in 2019, and we had big plans for 2020 overseas. Obviously, Coachella was pretty much like the sort of highlight of that. Getting the opportunity to play Coachella in 2020 was pretty much a career highlight. It doesn't really get bigger than that. So obviously, when that gets taken away, that's a pretty big knock. And that was hard for me to deal with. I was kind of like in denial up until that point. But, when that news drops, you realize that that's not happening. And that was very difficult for me. And obviously we were going to launch like a whole new brand of events, and I was going to take it on the road over America, which I'd never done before. We had big plans, and obviously, yeah, none of those could happen. So that was quite a tough pill to swallow. When Coachella got cancelled, it actually got postponed to October, and that sort of like I held on to that sort of glimmer of hope and potentially a little bit of denial, expecting that this could happen. And I didn't really want to deal with that kind of situation until it kind of got closer to October, and we realized that it wasn't going to happen. And then it got pushed to 2021, and obviously that didn't happen either. So, I mean, I was kind of like pushing those feelings aside for a long time, and didn't really want to deal with them. And I'm like the kind of person that, I'd rather sort of like bury my head in the sand and just hope that it all kind of comes out peachy at the end of the day, which, is probably not the best way to deal with these types of things. But yeah, it kind of got me through that first year, just kind of staying positive and hopeful. I'm pretty lucky in the sense that I actually held a day job pretty much all the way through my touring schedule through 2018, 2019. And in 2020, I managed to hold on to that, which was really a huge relief, because obviously I was watching, my friends and other people in the industry in the situation where they were, they didn't know where they were going to get their next, paycheck from. And I was very lucky in the sense that I knew I had that sort of stable income. Even though it wasn't a huge amount, it was still something coming in. So I managed to keep that through the whole of 2020, which was a saving grace. And then I also set up a Patreon page, which is a sort of subscription-based model where I would get a sort of monthly income from that. And it's still running up until today. And so I think it was really a good move, me kind of setting that up, because I wasn't in the same situation as my friends or other people in the industry who were really, really struggling. I'm very lucky that I was in that position to be able to, not worry about that kind of stuff. Yeah, when we went down a few levels and events could happen, it was obviously a little glimmer of hope, and you hold on to that, and you kind of make the most of it. You do the shows that you can, and you get a little bit optimistic, but in the back of your mind, you're still looking at the global situation, and you're still going, well, this is not the end. It can't be the end. This might be a little break in the whole situation. So you kind of make the most of it. And it just it's sort of timed in the sense that December we closed down again. And which is a sort of point where for DJs and artists such as myself is like pretty much the month of the year where you make most of your money and you play the most of your shows. That was obviously all taken away, which is really weird for me, because usually like Decembers for me are very busy. It's flying like, 15, 16 times in the month just to get to all these shows. And to have it kind of flip on its head was kind of weird for me, because I hadn't had a December that felt like that in a long time. Yeah, so over the next sort of few months, it's kind of hard to kind of figure out where South Africa is going to be heading. I think if you take a cue from what's happening overseas, events are starting to happen, but it's very strictly, weighted on vaccines and the vaccine rollout. Whereas first world countries seem to be doing a very good job of that. Their industries are starting to open up, and there's talk about places like the UK being fully open by July. And if you kind of take that cue, we're not in a very good spot, being in South Africa, because our vaccine rollout is not being handled very well, in my opinion. And I think like sort of the whole gathering thing just is so weighted on people being vaccinated. So if there's not enough people vaccinated, we can't open up. So for me, that could potentially be like the most frustrating thing, is actually being in this position where now I'm getting offers for tours and shows overseas, but I can't go there and play them because I don't have a vaccine. And there's actually no way for me to get a vaccine in the foreseeable future in this country. So that puts me in a very tricky position. It's almost like 2020 over again, but even worse, because, the places that want you to visit are out of reach just because of the way things are being handled currently in South Africa. So it's probably the biggest frustration for me right now. It's very frustrating being in this industry at this point in time, when your livelihood and your happiness really kind of hedges on being able to do, have gatherings and be around other people and be social. And when, it's very tricky when you get the finger pointed at you, because, you saying you are sort of the cause of, or I'm talking about the sort of live events industry in general, that you're the cause of, super spreading events and all of that kind of stuff, when all you really want to do is just being in the industry and being the artist that we are, just get back in front of people and do what we love. It's very, very frustrating. And you kind of just have to resign yourself to the fact that it is going to come back. This is not something that's going to be around forever. It can't be like this forever. And you just kind of have to be a little bit positive in the sense that, one day you will be able to get back to doing what you love. And just hopefully we can get there ASAP. I've been very lucky over the last sort of 10 years in my career that I've received a lot of positive reinforcements. I've achieved a lot personally, and I've kind of gone through the last at least 5 or 6 years pretty much on a high, staying positive about everything, and achievements were sort of followed by more achievements and more achievements. And so I kind of had all of this feeding back into me, and I never had to sort of feel the way that I feel now at this point. Obviously I kind of got through 2020 staying pretty positive and keeping the music going and everything, but I think it's kind of hit me now in 2021. And I feel like I might be going through what a lot of my friends and fellow colleagues were going through last year. So that's been quite difficult for me, because never in my career have I sort of felt this way, not felt as much drive to write music and not felt sort of motivated to write music. I've never sort of felt that way, just because everything's been feeding into this. It's been a bit of a roller coaster for me. And obviously it's been a roller coaster for everybody. Some people are on the up and some people are on a bit of a down at the moment. I'm in a bit of a dip, but like I said earlier, you just really have to kind of stay positive and look towards the future and just know that these will come back. These events will come back. I think at this point in sort of like the global COVID situation, it's very important, as I said, to stay positive. I set up this Patreon, obviously, when everything kind of closed down, and I've been lucky enough to sort of spend time with people from all over the world who are pretty much in the same situation as me. And what's quite inspiring to see from them is that, they're putting this time that they have now into learning more and into sort of broadening their horizons. Don't kill the dream. I mean, it might not be the best thing to hear when you're kind of feeling a little bit down, but you could channel this time and energy into sort of growing your skill set and just improving, so that when things do open up, you can hit the ground running.